I am a 100-year-old human and a World War II veteran. I want to share my life and experiences with people who might be helped by them. Ask me anything. As you may have imagined, the person typing and facilitating this AMA is not the 100-year-old human, but his granddaughter, me. A little bit about my grandpa. He grew up in Washington State and has traveled quite a bit. He worked for the FDA for many years, some as an investigator, some as a pharmacist. He served in the Air Force during World War II as a photographer. Clearly there's more to him than this, so ask him some questions. Ask me anything.
What was the most tense moment of your life?
When I stepped forward to get married. No kidding, just briefly, I thought I was gonna faint when the pastor asked those questions.
What's the food you loved in the past that doesn't taste the same anymore?
Good home fries. I'll have to think about that. We got more acquainted with lamb instead of beef. I can say he loves his oysters, always has and always will.
What did you do in the years after the war? Was it directly back to school or something else?
Got my license in pharmacy, saw recruitment for FDA and joined them, and traveled to see how other people lived.
Have you been to Germany or Japan since the war? What were your thoughts?
The wife and I have been to Germany since for vacation. I've been to Japan since in regard to FDA regulations. Just looking at their food habits and their environment, just appreciating what they had.
Living 100 years, what was the biggest leap of technology that you've experienced? What seemed the most unreal when it came out?
On computers, it was something that took me a while to catch on to, and how to use it. When they first became a thing, he was odd. On television, essentially the same answer.
What's one thing that you remember from your experiences that doesn't fail to make you smile?
Whenever he talks about his late wife, Audrey, there's a light that illuminates his entire being. He loved her so much. She died a little after I was born, so I didn't get to know her, unfortunately. His calendar in his bedroom is still on the month per year that she died. She was very dear to him.
I recently came across a shoebox full of letters that my great-grandparents wrote to each other during World War II. Did you have anyone you were writing sweetheart letters to?
For general letters, just a few people I met in the service Air Force. For sweetheart, there was a girl in study hall every other seat in the auditorium. I liked her very much. She had a Spanish book. I looked to the other side of me. Another girl had a dictionary. I used her dictionary to write to the first one. She thought I knew Spanish but I didn't. She was mad at me.
What was the biggest change you noticed while working for the FDA for many years?
How FDA regulations assured quality food, drugs, cosmetics.
Did you ever smoke tobacco?
Only on specific assignments of undercover work. At medical appointments I've taken him to. For the questionnaire he's always said, never. I guess it took a stranger asking to find the truth.
His photo group took the first pictures of Hiroshima after the bombing.
It was a fantastic illustration of science. He says he wasn't scared about the bomb because people did not understand what the atomic bomb was. Very surprising illustration of science. He was in Mount Baker, Washington. He didn't watch it at the time, but the word got out, don't drive faster than 35 miles per hour. Boy, it took forever to get home. The state made a law change, save gasoline and avoid accidents. He heard about it later on.
Thank you so much for your service. Can you tell me who your favorite president was in your lifetime?
Hoover. He was not very popular, but he was a good president. Just what you'd read about him, that's all. That's all you have to go on.
After all you've been through, what motivates you to do things nowadays?
Mainly my one specific granddaughter. Damn, okay, I'm a little teary-eyed smiley face.
What was his favorite plane that he got to photograph? World War II or anything afterward?
P-38 fighter. Photo. The fighter aircraft was used mainly in the Europe area. The photo area was used to take the guns out, but in 2 or 3 sets of cameras, and the prints, negatives that were produced were 18 inches wide and 9 inches deep. Most of those photos were made around 20,000 feet, so that it gives you the scale for how you want to measure it. The P-38 was used somewhat in the Pacific. The P-38 was an escort for the bombers, but it was mainly recognized as a fighter plane. But around Europe, the big river there, they put 150 and 300-pound bombs and made them into bombers, because the Germans would look up, oh, they're just taking photos, and kaboom.
What's the earliest song you remember hearing?
On music, he enjoys not modern times. He doesn't recall one specific song, but definitely enjoys classical music. He used to listen exclusively to Weta when he drove, and when we lived together I loved waking up to blaring classical, oldie music from the TV.
What is your diet like? Fat food.
His diet up until being in rehab, broke his hip a couple of weeks ago, was pretty rich, would go between his two favorite restaurants every night.
Rich salmon. And definitely oysters. As soon as he was out of surgery he was like, when can I get oysters?
My dad is in his 80s and says food today isn't nearly as good as it was when he grew up. Quality of meat, vegetables, etc. Any truth to that in your opinion?
I asked him this one and he started saying something about asking the right question and something about being in court. Here's the part one caught to type. I've seen this thing come up before in the U.S. attorneys, or at the least those with FDA. They did not ask a question in court until they knew what the witness would testify to. There was a situation where investigators from Portland and Seattle were covering oysters. Went somewhere they were washing oysters, there was leaves of a tree floating in there. When they came back the owners were there and they talked to him. The U.S. attorney did not want the investigator saying what the Portland person told the people. So they got the Portland inspector and testified, said he warned the people to not do it when the owners admitted they'd been advised as such by the investigators. Their attorneys from Chicago turned to the client and said, "You never told us that," and that made their case.
Hello sir, thank you for your service. Which theater did you photograph? It was quite a long time ago, but do you have any memories that stand out? Were you issued any weapons?
From New Guinea to Japan, and everything in between. Have to think about that. As for weapons, 45 pistols.
Hello sir, I'm from Morocco. I heard about your story, and this is amazing. Sir, I'm 25 years old. You have more experience in this life. So I will tell you my story. I am weak, sir. I don't have the power to stand in this world. Every night I think about suicide. I am fresh graduate. Still, I can't find a job. I can't find love. In the early stages of my life, my only friends were books. And still, now I can't find the meaning of life. I think every day about if this life deserves to be like that. So sir, my question, what is the meaning of life? How can we live with happiness? With your experience, how can someone like to be happy in this life? Thank you and have a nice day, sir. Best regards.
This is just the granddaughter right now, but I will ask him this next I see him. I'm 23. I want to say some words to you. Well, I don't know you. I don't believe you are weak. If every night you think about suicide and yet you don't listen to the lies your brain tells you, that makes you very, very strong in my book. As for being a fresh graduate and not being able to find a job, or a job in your major, that does not define you. That does not define your worth in this world. As a recent graduate myself, I know it's hard. It's so hard specializing in something and then not being able to find a job in that thing you're passionate about right away. But let me tell you, your human worth does not depend on your possession of a job. That's honestly what the system wants you to think. As for love, I would say from my experience I think that I only found it when I stopped desperately searching and wishing and projecting my desires on other people. However, I know that was just my personal barrier and everyone is different and has different love lives or issues or whatever. I do feel you about the only friends being books thing. I didn't learn a lot of social skills growing up, so I feel like I've had to do extra work to learn them now as an adult. It's hard, but it's so worth it, even though it's painful and it requires putting yourself out there and being open to the world and receptive to learning. I have made true growth as a person from doing these things, continue to improve myself. I read a little book thing about how to get closer to people. Please let me know if you would like it, and I will send it to you electronically. And as for the meaning of life, that's a damn tough one. I'm still unsure, but everything I've learned so far, props to Buddhism and mindfulness, is pointing me towards the conclusion that there is no real, solid, concrete destination or meaning of life, but that the meaning of life is the journey itself, to try to help others be happy and to try to follow what makes you happy. Even if the goal and the present are very far away, when we are going somewhere and look on a GPS, we don't wonder, man, why didn't I just teleport? But I found that thought to be present in my life. If I am here now and here is bad, so why am I not at that goal? But that's an incorrect way of thinking. I now try to keep in mind that life is a process, and as long as I am making efforts to move towards that goal of mine, even though I'm not there yet, then that is good, and that is all I can do. I hope this helps.